Hi all, Katrina with Blue Phoenix Creations here, working on another silk charmeuse scarf. For this video I thought I'd try something fun, and all I've included are the brush strokes, or anytime I was actively working I cut everything out. So we'll see what you think of this one. I like the way it turned out. I have already applied the resist. I used a metallic resist that stays. Why? Well, one, I like the metallic. It gives another nice layer of color. But two, if I use a standard resist that washes out, then the white lines are left from the design. And then I would have to come back and add paint or very carefully add dye right where the lines are. And since my hands tend to shake, following a line exactly, tracing on top, gets tricky. As anybody who's tried to trace something knows, your hand starts to shake because you're holding on so hard. So there we go, metallic resist because I like it. And it makes my life a little easier. I am applying colors, multiple colors in each section. In this case, I've got probably a scarlet and a carmine red. And I want them to blend and bleed together a bit. I'm also applying salt. The salt does all kinds of really fun things. It kind of pushes and pulls on the water and the dye. You get some very interesting textured effects. For this section, I've got my blue coming in, and then there's going to be a red, I believe, and I will leave a gap down the middle, a wet gap in between the two colors. Why am I going to do it that way this time? I don't want those two colors to immediately overlap and blend and end up as a very dark blend. I want to have a chance for those to bleed together a little more, get a little bit more interest as they blend across that wet gap. And of course, I'll come back in once I've applied both colors and start to encourage the colors moving back and forth. That's what I'm doing now. Kind of scrubbing the edges, adding a little more water, pushing from the dye area into the white area, and just making it all blend in a more interesting manner, or at least a different manner from other areas of the blend on the scarf. There's the salt that I'm putting right on the intersection of the two colors, again to push and pull my dye and water to give some more texture there. And you will see from time to time I will go back into a previously painted and salted section and add more water and sometimes more salt. As long as I'm careful with my brush strokes when applying more water over an area that's already been salted, the texture will stay. It may soften up a little bit, but it'll stay there. And so then with more water, that might reactivate the salt that's still there and give me a little additional texture, or I may apply more salt again to give me additional texture. It's kind of like building layers up. Well, like any other kind of painting, I'm going to do this layer and then that one and build it up from there. The other part is I really like blending and mixing different areas of my canvas, really is what I'm working on. So I will encourage the dye to bleed from one area to another, whereas most of the time people wouldn't, because they put the resist down there saying, hey, I don't want it to go any further, but I like the effects I get. I like the challenges I get. Can give me a shaded effect, can give me another tone. It's just fun. More salt on my green and blue. I'm going to say that this was Viridian and Cyan, but I could be wrong. For this particular scarf, I am using the ready-to-go Jacquard green label silk dyes. Those come in, I don't know, a couple dozen colors. It's certainly convenient and can go a lot faster than me stopping and mixing colors with citric acid and all the other fun stuff in order to make it work. And obviously, of course, I have sped all of this up. While I find the process of painting, well, enjoyable and possibly fascinating, um, there's a reason why the expression is watching paint dry. So, yes, I sped this up so that you guys don't have to just sit there and watch these long, slow strokes. Though some of these are pretty slow on higher speed, so you know that they were really slow in real time. And I'm sorry about the flickering. Apparently, the light above me was having an issue that was not visible to the naked eye, but shows up when you run your footage on higher speed. And I don't know how to fix that in the software. I'm sure somebody clever could tell me, but for the moment, here it is. Now that I've finished the background, shall we say, the main swaths of colors, it's time to come in and do the detailed shapes. So I have a wonderful little sphere here. I am pulling in more of that red and adding the yellow in. You can see I wet the red section down again and added more salt to encourage that to blend a little more and to make some more texture. And now on the sphere, I've come back in with the darker red to shadow around the edges and start to give it a little dimension. And then some more fun with the spirals. Now in this case, I'm starting with straight dye, fully concentrated. I haven't thinned anything out. And then as I progress around the spiral, I will start to thin things down. So I just added some water onto the silk, and now I'm adding the dye on top of it, and that has the effect of diluting it slightly. Not a whole lot, but it does. It has a visible effect later. I've now applied water all the way through the rest of that spiral, and now I'm just sweeping the existing dye down through the spiral to the tail. I want the tail to be very, very pale when I'm done, and I will come back and sparingly add some more dye to the spiral to make sure I get a nice smooth transition. And now I'm coming in with Midnight, I think. It's kind of a deep indigo purple color. But same thing, straight dye, then apply some water with dye on top, then apply some more water and sweep the existing dye around. Just kind of get that lovely faded ombre effect. And there's a nice little shot of what the salt did in between the green and blue. You can really see some wonderful texture there. And adding some green to the little floating ball there, and now we have some fun stuff. And I have bubbles within a bubble within bubbles or thereabouts. And this is just the same idea, Maybe it's multiple colors, maybe it's one color, using water, not using water, try and get some different levels, some different ombres, some nice little fades, just having some fun. This is definitely not the Renaissance painter, fully three-dimensional, gorgeous, illuminated, what have you. It's closer to a stained glass kind of effect. But anyhow, a little fun with it. And I will go back and forth and back and forth. A little hairdryer action there. I'm doing the background bubble here, kind of a goldish tone. I'm using my hairdryer frequently so that that doesn't bleed into the bubbles. When I'm painting this one, I'm doing every other stripe. We'll just call it stripe for right now. Just so that the colors have a chance to blend within that stripe without bleeding into the other ones while it's all wet. And then I can come back, dry the ones I did, do my second row, get it all together. It just helps a little bit in case I flood too much with one of the colors to keep it from transferring so much into another stripe. But given that I want the two tones to blend and play and do interesting things, I'm going to keep going back and forth, adding a little more dye, adding some more water, pushing things around with my brush until it gets close to what I want it to do. I make it behave. No, I don't make it behave. It's never going to behave, but I work with it and hope that I get what I'm looking for. And all of this was getting ready for the Stitches Expo. So of course I finished this one, pulled it off the frame, steamed it, washed it, ironed it, and took it to the show. So I don't have any finished photos of it. I have one of it finished, sort of. It hasn't been steamed or anything, but unfortunately I did not get a final shot of this one, and I sold it. There we go. There's my shot before it got steamed.